Yeah. Am I recording this?
Okay, right. And we are going to be recording on Skype as well to be uploaded to Caroline Stevens Seeking the Truth on YouTube. So we are going live now, Facebook. Well, good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We were going to go live at 9 o'clock, but I lost my guest. Didn't I, Greg?
My fault. My fault.
You were running back off to New Zealand, I think. We've done part 1, part 2, and now we're on to part 3. So I was just saying to Greg, just off air, somebody contacted me this afternoon and said, was I trying to chase you off the show last night? And no, it was like getting on for 10 o'clock. And sometimes other people need to use the kitchen, which is where I conduct all my shows. So there is nothing personal. And you know, I always lay my cards on the table. And it's a case of sometimes, you know, we have other lives as well. And it's not as if Greg or myself are paid for these shows. So, Greg, welcome back. Over to you. We've been talking off air about the referendum over a few weeks. And I was just driving back after collecting some food for the homeless. And there are all these radio programs saying, be prepared for Brexit. So I guess there's some people making some money out of all of this. And, you know, the fact that the government is putting money into our ports, which are a privatized organization, I think it's probably taking taxpayers' money and putting it in the hands of the banksters. So with that, over to you.
Okay, so I had a day sitting outside, so I didn't actually get to prepare anything. But what I did today was read an affidavit that I lodged in the Queen's Bench High Court in April 2015, which kicked everything off in the situation that we're in now, and I could see its influence. And I was reading the affidavits on the end of it, on the end of the statement of claim. The addendums, there's about 20 of them, and they cover 200 pages, and they're all about individual points of the illegitimacy of various monarchs and princes of Wales and the illegitimacy of the British royal family. And I wrote that 4 years ago, and I haven't had a look at it since, and it's in a folder that's part of court papers that were accepted by the High Court Queen's Bench and actually passed under cognitive avoidance and passive acquiescence. So the judges, there were 2 judges. One was a fake judge. He was actually a district court circuit judge, Martin Parry, who tried to pass himself off as a Queen's Bench High Court judge. So he committed fraud, so I recused him. And then the second judge, Pierce Higgins, he was a Queen's Bench High Court judge. He took my recusing of the first judge, who was fraudulent, Martin Parry, as an appeal to appeal. But it wasn't an appeal to appeal, and it wasn't an appeal. It was recusing the judge for fraud and bias and stating that he was a High Court Queen's Bench High Court judge when he was actually a district court circuit judge. And district court circuit judges are known as clowns.
Why were you going to court in 2015, may I ask?
I was claiming the status of Prince Pretender to the throne and crown of the United Kingdom.
What's the Prince Pretender?
Prince Pretender is the person who's really the monarch, as opposed to the flatline royal incumbent family, who are illegitimate frauds who have been usurping the British throne for 200 years.
So you're not going to be one of the ugly sisters. Could you be a Cinderella then in the end?
More like a Peter Pan.
Ah, right, okay.
Because it was actually Queen Victoria who commissioned J.M. Barrie to write Peter Pan, and Peter Pan is actually the story of her firstborn son, Prince Marquis Manuel. So when Peter Pan's flying down the Thames past Big Ben, and he says, you go out to the end of the river and then turn right, and that takes you down to Portugal. Right. And Prince Marquis Manuel travelled on the P&O cruises. So the P&O are the only shipping line to be given their own royal ensign, their own royal mark on their flag. Right.
Right, okay. So what's the connection with Portugal then? You've got the royal bloodline connected with Portugal, and I believe Ivan Talbot has as well. Is that correct?
You've been told that what has as well?
Ivan Talbot?
Yes. Yeah, that's the chap in
Australia.
Australia. Yeah. Yes. Well, we actually predate him. So, yeah, enough on that.
So what's the connection then with the UK and Portugal? I know they've always been one of our bestest allies.
Very bestest. The Treaty of Windsor was signed in about 1387, around then. It might have actually been signed in about 1378, and then it was renewed in, I think, 1386. And it's the longest standing treaty, supposedly. And Portugal acknowledged the treaty and Britain didn't. Britain actually went and stole Portuguese controlled nations in Africa so that Britain could draw a line straight down Africa, whereas Portugal had a line going straight across Africa. So Portugal said, okay, you guys have it. And then
so the UK did a dirty on Portugal.
Yeah. And then the fake King Edward VII knew that Prince Marquis Manuel was the King of England and living in Portugal. So King Edward VII assassinated the Portuguese royal family.
That's true. Wow, that's pretty shocking.
Yeah, and when the Prince Regent, the surviving Prince Regent, left Portugal because it was too dangerous, because the Masons were playing havoc, he sailed to Brazil, which is the daughter of Portugal, and then King Edward VII diverted the ship to England, and the King of Portugal lived in Wimbledon, Twickenham. And then he was playing tennis one day and dead from poison the next in around 1932. So the escape happened in 1910, and he lived in Twickenham for 22 years, and then he was killed under Edward VII's orders, but it was the killing was done under George V, his son, George V. Actually, not his son, but his apparent son.
Why do you think that the British royal family have outsurpassed all the other royal families?
Because the British royal family were the most illegitimate, and they bred their illegitimacy into all the European royal families. And then the Rothschilds told the European royal families that the British royal family were illegitimate and illegitimate Rothschilds. So when the Rothschilds got their agents to create revolution, including World War One and World War Two, the royal families didn't have a leg to stand on, a leg of integrity to stand on, so they just folded. And the last one to fold was Yugoslavia in 1945.
Right. Who was the royal family in 1945 done in Yugoslavia?
This is a very difficult question. Peter.
Right. Okay.
So the British royal family survived because they were conniving against the European royal families. And the British royal family were actually connived by Prince Philip and his uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, and Lord Louis Mountbatten's father, Louis Mountbatten. And
they were bad eggs, though, weren't they? I mean, that's why there was the bombing in Brighton.
Say again?
That was why there was the bombing in Brighton. The truth of the matter is they were such bad eggs. Lord Mountbatten was killed, wasn't he?
He was killed in Ireland.
which when they had the bombs going off at the hotel in Brighton, which
Yeah, I think it was Margaret Thatcher who was aimed at there.
and there was Tebbit. Tebbit was he involved in that as well?
I don't know anything really about the bombing in Ireland. So what I thought I'd do is, so I've got this affidavit, this statement of claim, which I wrote in 2016, and it's got a few good points in it. So what I thought I'd do is show that yes, woohoo! Teach me for eating chocolate cake just before an interview. I want to show, verbally at least, Elizabeth's proclamation that she's queen, and then show how she listed it in the London Gazette. And how
so what is a proclamation then? What do you mean by Queen Elizabeth made a proclamation?
She made a proclamation. She advertised that she was queen. When her father died, she made a proclamation that she was queen. And it was lodged in the London Gazette, but it was lodged fraudulently.
What do you mean by fraudulently then?
It's an absolute fraud. The London Gazette is an absolute fraud. Excuse me.
Okay, so why did the Queen need to put an advert in to say she was queen?
Well, that's the protocol.
Is it? Right, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, anybody could do that. Anybody else could have done that then. But when did the Privy Council get formed? Was that before the Queen or after the Queen?
Well, the Privy Council are the agents for silent weapons for quiet wars. And Coronation Day was actually the coronation of silent weapons for quiet wars and not Elizabeth.
So it's 53 then?
Yeah, Elizabeth's not the daughter of George VI, King George VI. And she's not the daughter of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons, so she's doubly illegitimate. And she knows that. And they were waiting on the predictions. And there's a whole lot of predictions going back to the 2nd century, so between 100 and 200 AD, on who the King of England will be. And they also describe what he will look like and what sort of life he's led.
Really?
Yeah, and they actually give his birth date as well.
When was his birthday?
His birthday was 4:50 p.m., 14th of September, 1961, Greenwich Mean Time.
Were you born in 61?
Yeah, that was my birthday to the minute. And that's the exact time that they predicted in the 2nd century, between 100 and 200 AD. In the Hebrew language, and then in exactly 200 AD, they turned off the Hebrew language for 1700 years. So no one spoke Hebrew for 1700 years. No one wrote it or spoke it. And then it was revived between 1880 and 1920, and then it was registered as an official language again in 1921. But it was an altered language. Right?
So how can you stop using a language for 1700 years and then suddenly go on a restart button?
Well, it seems to be that the Hebrew language was actually based on predictions, and it was a predictive language. And one of the traditions of the occult sciences is when they get something right, they don't want to interfere with it. They don't want to tweak it, so they just turn it off. They just turn everything off and walk away and leave it as is, right? So the Hebrews walked away from Israel and went to the Iberian Peninsula, which is Portugal and Spain.
Right. Okay.
Right? And then the Dageshanis from Georgia and southern Russia and the Caspian Sea, they went in and said, and from Russia, they went into Israel and said, we're the Jews. And everyone went, really? Yeah. Really? Well, okay, we'll make it official. So in about 1573, the Dageshanis, Ashkenazis, went to the Catholic Church and they said, we want to be the new Jews. And then in 1573, Catholic canons were written up that the Dageshanis and Russians and Ashkenazis were the Jews.
But they were the fake Jews.
Exactly.
Gosh, so when do you reckon? I mean, I understood that the Vatican had been infiltrated since probably before the 1100s.
Yeah, well, what happened was Pope St. Gregory the Great, he died in 604 AD, and he came up with the idea of the Merovingian, the Red Movement, which is the Merovingian conspiracy to hide the true Jesus Mary lineage inside the Catholic Church without anyone knowing, without the Catholics knowing, and without sometimes even the people knowing themselves.
It's like a Trojan horse, then, isn't it?
Well, it's also a Trojan horse against itself. So a lot of these organizations are actually doing they're doing the exact opposite of what they set out to do. Because so many people go into organizations to sabotage those organizations.
I know.
Right? And Freemasonry is one of those, right? So you get Freemasonry, it's been going on since, well, I don't know, since Egyptian times. And then it becomes, the Grand Lodge is built in 1717 in London. And some of those Freemasons are actually working against Freemasonry as it was. And then working against Freemasonry actually becomes the main action. And then another group of saboteurs come along and gets changed again. You know? So
well, I understand from people who have been taken to court and lost all their belongings, and they were probably Freemasons themselves years ago. There seems to be a big conflict now between groups of Freemasons. So, you know, you reach a tipping point, don't you? How far can you take absolute corruption? And when people realize this is happening to themselves and their families, then it changes, doesn't it? It changes the whole landscape.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the Freemasons will look at me and they'll go, this guy's predicted, and this is what he's doing, and his information is really good, and he's been talking on the media now for 12 years. He's never lied once. He's got one or two things wrong here and there, but that's usually off the cuff comments, and we've got to sabotage him. And another group will be going, no, we've got to support him, right?
Yeah, that's what it's happening now.
Yeah. So they don't really.
I mean, I know I've just done earlier on this year. I did some interviews with a gentleman who put the videos up on a website called "Judges Behaving Badly," particularly targeting corrupt judges. I mean, obviously there are a lot of those. But those videos have now been taken down, we believe, by the police. But it's, you know, all we can do at the moment, because we aren't a united force, all we can do is keep highlighting corruption. That chocolate cake has got a lot to answer for.
I know. I think I might be having anaphylactic shock. So. Yes, that is all true. Actually, it is. It's up and down, and then you've got different movements in and around, say, Freemasonry. Like you've got the Rosicrucians, right? And then you've got what a Rosicrucianism initially was.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, kind of nor do I, but I'll tell you what I do know. And then you've got Rosicrucianism that was revived by my ancestor Sir Walter Raleigh, and then you've got Rosicrucianism now, which seems to be around the Georgia Guidestones, right? Which is
was Walter Raleigh a Talmudic Jew?
I don't think so. He was an alchemist. He spoke and wrote 6 languages, and he was one of the best sailors in the world. And as was the sport of the day, he was also a pirate. But then he was a privateer. And then he was a trader, and then he was a pirate, and then he was a privateer, and then he was a trader. And he got the Portuguese Madre de Deus, which had the biggest gold haul in history. And then his grandson was my 11th great-grandfather, which was the Prince of Pirates, Black Sam Bellamy. And he was called the Prince of Pirates because he was so gentlemanly in the way he took over other ships and invited the people in the other ships to join them, including Blackbeard. The Prince of Pirates, Black Sam Bellamy, took over Blackbeard and his ship and offered Blackbeard to join him. Blackbeard refused, so he put him in a dinghy in the middle of the Atlantic with 12 other people rowing frantically to shore. Right, and then in 2002, the Prince of Pirates Black Sam Bellamy's wider galley ship, the only pirate ship confirmed ever to be discovered, was dug up, and his gold haul, part of it, did a 6-year tour around the United States, and that was at Cape Cod, and he was engaged to Maria Goody Hallett, and then she gave birth a couple of weeks after he drowned. The ship sunk 500 meters offshore in a storm, and then she was advertised as eaten by a whale. Their son, was advertised as dead, but the British Navy actually sailed them back to Barham Castle near Rotherfield, and then the grandson became Mayor of Brighton, and then his son became the Mayor of Brighton twice. So, it's like a lot of ups and downs and fortune there. So anyway, one of the things I found out was that my 13th great-grandfather, Sir Walter Raleigh, he was kept in the Tower of London for about 13 years. And when I went to the Tower of London, I was coming from New Zealand through America, West Coast, East Coast, and then missed my plane, then caught my plane, and then flew into London, and then went to the Tower of London on the 10th of July, 1988. And that was the exact day that they changed the immigration policy to try and make it so that I could not live and work in England.
So, really?
Yeah.
So they were basically focusing on you. I mean,
yeah. So they were focusing on me before I knew who I was.
Right. So they knew who you were before you knew who you were.
Yeah. Yes. And they were giving me hints. And it's only just recently, in the last year or so, that I found out that when the Hebrews predicted the Mashiach, HaMashiach, which means the Mashiach.
Well, what do you mean by the Mashiach?
Mashiach is the predicted one, the person who will represent the end times new age, the person who had the title which renders them automatically the King of England.
Why do you call it the new age? Because that sounds a little bit hippie-ish.
Oh, really? We've had each age is around 2,000 years, or more accurately, 2,130 or 2,150 or 2,160 years is a long year, right? So we've got a year is 1 year, we've got a long year is 2,150 years, and then you've got the great year, which is 12 of those, so it's around 26,500 years. And each age you have someone who represents the end times new age changeover. And the high orders, which is the Priority Sion, who work on predictions for the 2,000-year period, and the Rosicrucians work on the 1,000-year period, and the Freemasons work on the 100-year period. So the Priority Sion was working on the 2,000-year period, and they chose my co-author and me to represent the end times. And then I was betrayed, and then I ended up representing the New Age, and then that was acknowledged by Queen Elizabeth II and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, on the 3rd of June 2019.
Have you met Donald Trump?
No. So that was about 3 months ago that they acknowledged what I'd done, right?
Right.
So that meant that I was fulfilled and acknowledged the predictions about me, which meant that they'd actually picked the right person. And so all the other stuff that I've done, which if I tell people all at once, it's just too much. But it all falls into line. And so Queen Elizabeth...
Can I read the Queen's proclamation?
Yeah. So Queen Elizabeth has been abdicating to me many, many times, including getting shot at. So in 1953, she did a proclamation. Now, most people don't realize how to read. They don't know how to read. They're level 2 readers. They read a sentence or a paragraph or a page, and they take from it what they think the author intended them to take. But there are 8 different reading levels, And when you look at something like the Chicago Manual of Styles, I don't know, can you see that?
What's the Chicago Manual Style?
Yeah, so when you look at, say, the Chicago Manual of Styles or the Oxford Styles Manual, right, they tell you what things like a paragraph means, a first line indent means, what a speech mark means, what a semicolon means, what a colon means, what an N dash means, an M dash, etc. So when you actually read a document like Elizabeth's proclamation that she's queen, it actually says that it is a moot point hearsay that Elizabeth is queen and that she is a suffix delinquent, which means that she is illegitimate or bankrupt or both. So I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering how I should do it. So maybe I should just read it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Chapter 1, tacit consent by deceit creating colour of law styles for an illegitimate commoner as monarch, March to June 1953. Tacit consent by deceit creating colour of law. There are 8 different reading levels. The 8th level is the most legal and will take precedence over all the lower levels. Most people read at level 2, which consumes words with a lazy, unquestioning mind, giving consent to a connivance victory for another.
Who says this?
Well, myself from my own research and discussions and watching the law videos and looking.
What do you mean by level 2? Because you were brought up in New Zealand. So what do you mean by level 2 in the UK? Because I was a teacher, so I'm
okay. Well, level 2 is probably the level of reading level that you are teaching your students who are 17 and 18.
Really?
Yeah, you're actually teaching them to be stupid. Sorry, but
well, I was teaching maths, so it doesn't apply to me.
Yeah, okay. You are excused, Caroline.
I am. I focus on numbers. So when people say, "Oh, Caroline, you speak so slowly," but yes, actually, if you speak slowly, it just means what my brain works on mathematical terms. If you give me some numbers, I'm really quick. And also, I'm much slower around the kitchen table. It's not so easy doing this around the kitchen table unless you've got well, it's just not. I prefer the energy of a big audience and being able to walk around like a teacher would do. Anyway, I digress. So, level 2, I was just intrigued because I'll tell you something. I'd like to interrupt now. They did a survey for people who are watching who are concerned about the referendum and what happened in 75. And when we went into the EU, EEC on the 1st of January 73, the University of Sheffield actually did an analysis of the documentation that was being issued in 75, and they found that the average reading age of the literature for staying in the EEC was something like 8 3/4, but the average age used to leave for the referendum was aged 11, and they actually reckoned it was better to aim low and capture a greater audience. But not a lot of people know that. But anyway, I digress. So, proclamation from the Queen.
Okay, so I'm just introducing you to the way to analyse language so that you can analyse the Queen's proclamation and realise that it is a fraud. Right, so there are 8 different reading levels. The 8th level is the most legal and will take precedence over all the lower levels. Most people read at level 2, which consumes words with a lazy, unquestioning mind, giving consent to a connivance victory for another. Legal documents, proclamations, decrees, treaties, acts, and statutes are full of hidden meanings, hidden in the different fonts, font sizes, bold, italics, underline, speech marks, first line indents, paragraph indents, Latin and ancient Latin, creating different jurisdictions and removing text off the page. In this way, quote, squiggly lettering published by authority, end quote, documents, so in this way, published by authority documents obtain tacit consent to frauds and forgeries, thereby a connivance where your silent consent is their victory.
Now, when you say your silent consent, we spoke about this, I think probably last night, where I'd encouraged people not to vote this year because that was giving consent. So what do you mean by silent consent?
Well, if they write published by authority in a different font that's all very artistic, not Times Roman or not Times New Roman, and it looks like it's in an ancient font, that is to be removed off the page and read separately. And if you look at the letters, say, if you look at the A, the capital A on authority, it's got a big foot going right across in both directions on one foot of the A, and it's got another strike across the knee of the A, and it's got the top of the A is curving away and then back down, so it looks like an ear, and the other side of the top of the A is pointing in a different direction, and it's actually not an A, right? And they're actually not letters. And the published, the P, actually looks like an upside down T and a reverse C with a dot in the middle. It's actually not a P, but we assume that it's a P, but it's not. And if I was to read published by authority without the squiggles, it would be U E UIE UOI.
What does that represent?
Nothing. It's gobbledygook.
A bit like Brexit then, isn't it? Because Brexit
Exactly.
represents nothing.
That's what they do. So that's what they're doing with the royal styles and titles in the proclamation, is they had all these squiggly letters, and they're very commonly used up until the 70s. And people go, they'd see the squiggly letters and they'd go, oh, this is a document of some authority, but it actually had no authority, and it was a connivance fraud. Right? And the whole British Empire used connivance fraud via text, fonts, layout, right? You there?
Yeah, I certainly am. Connivance fraud.
Connivance
that goes with the territory, surely.
What's that?
That goes with the territory.
Yeah, connivance fraud. Okay. So your silent consent is their victory. Now, tacit consent is used by the governing corporations to acquire consent from an unsuspecting public who are only taught to read to level 2, which is 17, 18-year-olds finishing school and completing it, and they are certified stupid. A tacit means understood or implied without being stated, implicit, unspoken, unstated, undeclared, unsaid, unexpressed, unmentioned, unvoiced, silent, and mute. Tacit consent becomes the colour of law, but is not actually law. Right?
Is that because we should be focusing on syntax?
No, you can do that as well, but it's actually, there's about 10 things you need to learn, and when you learn those things, you can read a document real quick, and you can go, okay, it is a moot point hearsay that Elizabeth is the Queen, and she is a delinquent, therefore she is either illegitimate or bankrupt. And if she's not bankrupt, then she's illegitimate.
Right, so can I just interrupt you there, because
again.
I know I must have been a nightmare pupil, so it's just as well I turned out to be a teacher instead, isn't it? So I got the last word in. So basically, off air we've talked about, we won't mention that person's name, but there is somebody who's very concerned about the Constitution, and he writes copious letters, copious words in letters to the Queen, etc. But he won't accept that the Queen is a fake queen. So my question to him today was, what is the point of writing all these letters when you are concerned about, and you're not acknowledging that the Queen you're talking about is actually a fake queen? I mean, how does that stack up? Is he not surely wasting his time?
Yes, he is, and he's suffering from cognitive dissonance. which
I
is,
thought so.
yeah, okay, good. We understand that then. Right, now, second paragraph, or maybe the third paragraph, which has only taken 48 minutes. Tacit consent is used by governing corporations to acquire consent from an unsuspecting public who are only taught to read to level 2. So we've done that. Now, the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC 1952, governs the world of private contracts. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, 1953, states they declared war against the public in 1953. They actually state that, right? And they took over the Crown in the same year. And the way Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars declared war against the public was by taking over the Crown. And Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was the one who was crowned in 1953. And they used the Queen and the Crown as the deep state to make war against the public.
So they've used the box in the corner. I mean, I think we should have some sort of competition to stop people. We should have a bet or something. And I'm not a gambling person, but we should have a stop the box competition. We should not use that box for 2 weeks and see how our lives would improve and how our thought processes would improve. What do you reckon?
Fine, but I'm more specific. So I shall carry on. The war against the public began with the death of King George VI on the 6th of February 1952, the Uniform Commercial Code in 1952, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars in 1953, Elizabeth's accession on the 6th of February 1962, and Coronation Day on the 2nd of June 1953, with a crown hat placed on her head, implying the crown, but it's really the throne with the crown and Temple Bar. Right, so the Privy Councillors hang out in Temple Bar, and they protect the Queen's Majesty, i.e., they convince everyone in the public that that Elizabeth is actually the Queen and she's actually real, and it's treasonous and heresy to say that she's not the Queen, whereas they know absolutely well that she is not the Queen, and they are actually serving Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and everyone beneath the Privy Council has to obey Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars and the deep state crown as though it was a crown of some legitimacy and integrity, when it is a grand coup takeover.
And you said last night that our Privy Council is the equivalent of the deep state in the USA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who formed the Privy Council in the UK? Do we know?
I think it might have been Henry VIII. And I'm pretty sure, because I think it was around
No,
then.
it's been going that long.
Yeah. Well, Henry VIII did a grand coup. He actually killed another one of my ancestors, Queen Anne Boleyn, and faked her death as well. Sir Walter Raleigh's death was faked, and Queen Anne Boleyn's death was faked, and they carried on to breed the Holy Grail lineage. Right? Sire and breed the Holy Grail lineage, which would be the true monarchs. The best side of the monarchs were killed off, but actually their deaths were faked. They got to breed again, and that culminated in someone about now whose name is actually an anagram of Holy Grail, which is Gregory Hallett.
So you're not one of the runts then?
I'm not the runt. I'm not a runt.
I've never asked you this really personal question. Have you got any children of your own?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Are you looking for a wife?
Well, I want to achieve my position first, but whatever. So, the crown hat placed on the head. Yeah. So crown hat. What's that?
I've distracted you now.
A crown hat is placed on Elizabeth's head, implying crown, but it's really thrown with the crown and Temple Bar. The greatest coup of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars 1953 was the 11th supplement to the London Gazette, purportedly printed on Friday, the 29th of May 1953, 4 days before Coronation Day on Tuesday, the 2nd of June 1953, where speech marks a proclamation, all caps, end speech marks, where a proclamation is a fraud and forgery. Now, by your level 2 reading level and tacit consent to the colour of law deceit, You believed the A proclamation, registered A Princess Elizabeth, confirmed as Queen of the land and people of the United Kingdom, Her Majesty, the sovereign on that throne, and that this was the crown. But the Oxford Styles Manual reveals it is a connivance, fraud, and forgery. Since 1952-53, you have been subject to consent coefficient tests. You complied to colour of law everything such that by 1953, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars considered, quote, this is actually Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars writing, it's in their book, quote, consent the primary victory. A silent weapons system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal but not always lawful force. The enforced delivery of well-organized data, a useful indicator of public consent, consent coefficient, numerical feedback indicating victory status, seizing private property without just compensation is a psychological indicator the public is ripe for surrender, consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. The number paying voluntary income tax despite the number of people paying voluntary income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal honest service from the government indicates harvest time, end quote. And I've added ... and a fake monarchy.
So hang on, you're saying that income tax is voluntary?
Yeah.
So we don't have to pay income tax?
True. Well,
really?
they did,
well, it didn't affect me, but anyway. So hang on, the Queen didn't pay tax until quite recently, did she?
I doubt that she actually pays tax.
So she's managed to squirrel money away on offshore accounts. So, I mean, the amount of tax she's paid is minimal. But I think there was a big PR exercise a few years ago, and the Buckingham Palace machines were in full flow, and I think they did say she was paying a minimal amount of tax, and that she was suffering through austerity and austere times, says the woman who owns more property and land and jewels than anybody else in the world. How many properties does she have?
I don't know. It's about a sixth of the planet.
A sixth of the planet.
Yeah.
In one family.
Yeah. So income tax was started to support World War One. So what they did was not declare the end of World War One, so they could carry on taxing people.
Oh, because the tax was to pay for the war.
Yeah.
It was to pay the bankers for going to war in the first place.
Yeah, and the Rothschilds do not pay tax because they funded all of the ammunition for World War II.
Right, hang on. The sound went a little bit strange. You said about the Rothschilds and the ammunition.
Yeah, so the Rothschilds do not pay tax because they funded all of the ammunition for World War II.
They don't pay tax, the Rothschilds.
Because they funded all of the ammunition for World War II.
Wow.
Right? Now, that's in England. Now, you'll also find that the Rothschilds don't pay tax in Germany because they funded all of the ammunition for World War II.
Now, let's just hold it there, because I'm going to interrupt again, because I think we need just to do a little bit of a rain check, because there are a lot of important people, I should say, in the public eye that are very keen, that they are Jewish, and they're very keen to put the blame on the Germans. And I've always said no. Well, in recent times, I've said, no, it's nothing to do with Germany. How clever it is of the banksters to create wars with our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, because war indebts a nation more than anything else. So if the bank wants to make huge amounts of money, they loan money to both sides, to both countries, and then create a war between those two countries.
And the governments are complicit. I mean, the thing is, the governments, the prime ministers of the day, were totally complicit. I mean, you know, a lot of people may not know, but I mean, we were brought up that Winston Churchill was great. And, you know, there's a lot of people probably watching tonight who have had Winston Churchill cartoons or profile pictures on their own Facebook page. But in actual fact, Winston Churchill was a gambler and everything else, was totally indebted. And my understanding is that the City of London bailed him out on the proviso that he did their bidding for them. I mean,
he was a virtual bankrupt many times over.
Yeah.
And after World War II, he had no money and he couldn't afford to live in something like Charter House or Chatham House or whatever the name of his house was.
Oh, you went about the place, Chartwell
House.
In
He couldn't
Kent.
afford to live in it. So,
the National Trust place.
Yeah, so about 20 guys formed a syndicate and funded Churchill to live till the end of his days, which was about another 20 years.
And of course, it's Winston Churchill's grandson, one of his grandsons, who's actually running the New World Organization, Serco, which is in charge of our prisons, the Olympic Games, involved in our nuclear side to some degree. It deals with air traffic control in Australia and traffic lights in London. Basically, his family's not done too badly out of this, have they?
Well, he also was the sperm donor for Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret.
Did you say a sperm donor?
Yeah, he was the artificial insemination sperm donor that resulted in the birth of Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. So he's the father of the Queen.
Winston Churchill is the father of the Queen. Well, if I put that as a post tonight or tomorrow, I don't know. I don't know how many friends, Facebook friends, I should say, I would lose from that.
No, I've done interviews on it before in great detail and showed photographs of all the people involved, and some of Winston Churchill's official daughters looked exactly like Elizabeth and Margaret. Exactly. You know.
But Winston was quite ugly, though, wasn't he?
Well, no one really knew what he looked like because he's such a fat alcoholic. So no one knew what his facial features were because he's always just so fat. He's only 5'4". You know, people thought he was a big man. He's a tiny little wide hip, waddling dude. And, you know, Elizabeth is only, she was 5'2" at her tallest.
Shall I tell you what I heard the other day? And, you know, maybe somebody can substantiate this. But they said, you know, he was made out to be the man of the people and how he stood firm in London whilst the bombs were dropped. But in actual fact, he knew when the bombs were being dropped.
Yeah.
So he was being shuttled out of London on the nights when he knew the bombs were being dropped. And then they would shuttle him back at daybreak. And all the pictures would be taken of him staying there and surviving the night. But in actual fact, he was somewhere else.
Yeah. Yes, and he was the illegitimate son of King Edward VII.
Right, well, that family's done all right for themselves, haven't they?
Mm.
And of course, his Robert Soames is the chief executive of Serco. His brother is in Parliament. Is it Nicholas Soames? Or is it one of the other Soames? Rupert, Robert, then there's Nicholas Soames. Yeah, they've done all right.
Right. Okay. The number paying voluntary income tax despite an obvious... the number of people paying voluntary income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal honest service from the government indicates harvest time and a fake monarchy. You have been hoodwinked by your laziness of the English grammatical language and duped into believing, speech marks, a proclamation, all caps, end quote, registered Anne Elizabeth as Queen with a crown, but the all caps removes itself off the page, hereinafter also the proclamation, lowercase. So when it says normal lowercase lettering, the proclamation, and all caps, a proclamation, they're actually two different things. They're talking about two different things. A proclamation in all caps is ancient Latin or dog Latin, which and you can't have two languages on the same page in a legal document. So when it's all caps, or when it's in really fancy lettering, or when it's in bold, or when it's in italics, it's removed off the page. And the italics is legally ambiguous. So when it mentions Elizabeth in all caps and italics, it's saying legally ambiguous dog Latin to be removed off the page. So it's actually a blank there on a true document, proclamation, decree, treaty, act, statute. So the paperwork.
When it says it, when the writing's in capitals, is that normal anyway?
No, writing in all caps is in Latin. It's in ancient Latin or dog Latin. It's not in English. And all of the documents in England have to be in English. They can't be in Latin. And they stopped teaching Latin in schools. The grammar schools used to teach Latin. I went to a grammar school for a bit. And they stopped teaching it in about 1980.
Laboro, laboras, laborat, laboramus, laboratus, laborant. Amo, amasamat, amarmus, amatis, amant. So there we go. And I'm younger than you.
Oh, you can be younger than me if you want to. I don't mind. So the paperwork is staring you in the face that this is a fraud and forgery connivance to seize property without just compensation, including the throne, the crown hat, the crown, and the styles and titles pertaining to them, and all the lands and influence pertaining to these. Right? So Elizabeth's proclamation is a fraud and forgery connivance to seize property without just compensation, including the throne, crown hat, crown, styles and titles, and land and influence. So if we had the graphics, we don't really have the graphics, but when I get around to it, I'll insert these images into a movie, right? So what I've got the Elizabeth Proclamation, which is registered on number 39873 and number 3023, 11th supplement to the London Gazette of Tuesday, 26th of May, 1953, published by authority, registered as a newspaper, Friday, 29th of May, 1953. And everything I've just read is in a different font. Each line is in a different font. So every line does not relate to the previous line and has to be read separately. So what I've done is
Why has it been written in different fonts on different lines?
Well, people used to think that it made the document look important and people had actually taken some time over it to make it look pretty, but in actual fact it's a connivance, fraud and forgery. For instance, the date 26th of May, the 2 is written in subscript, and then you've got the 6 and then TH, and then the May is in all caps, and then you've got a comma, and you've got 1953, and the 1 is actually an I, and the 9 is subscript, the 5 is subscript, and the 3 is subscript, and the 5 is bigger than the 9, and the 3 is bigger than the 5. So none of those numbers relate together. It says I953 when it should say 1953. So they've used an I instead of the number 1. Right?
And what's the purpose of that?
Well, if you were to take me to court and say, I'm suing you for actions on the 26th of May, I953, and I'm going, hang on a minute, I wasn't there then. Yes, you were. No, that says I953. It doesn't say 1953. Case dismissed. Right?
Right.
So what we're looking at is very obvious connivance, fraud and forgery, which we can pick up now very easily. And back in the day, people used to look at this, oh, it's the London Gazette. It's the truth. The truth has been published. We must read this because, oh, look, it says by the Queen, a proclamation. Hang on a minute. Okay. And it says Elizabeth R. Dot. And Elizabeth is all caps. And
no, Elizabeth R means she's gone on holiday, isn't she?
Well, the Elizabeth R. Dot means that she's claiming to be a royal regnate or regina, but the Elizabeth is written in italics, which means it's legally ambiguous. that she is a royal regnant or regina.
But for the people who missed last night's show, the R bit was put there when she went away for 7 weeks. Now,
Yeah,
she'd been on holiday all her life then.
yeah. Well, R means being on a royal tour or a royal visit, and R dot means
Exactly.
royal
See, I
regnant.
do pay attention to teacher.
Good,
Greg.
good. Okay, so what they're
There's going to
saying,
be a test after this, is there?
yeah. So what they're saying is that as someone legally ambiguous in pretending to be Elizabeth, but it's actually in ancient Latin or Roman or Dog Latin, is removed off the page, and then there's a royal, but Elizabeth is not the royal, right? And then it says the actual text reads like, oh crap, someone's trying to make a point and they're just so off topic. They're just constantly off topic. They're not making the point at all. They're actually trying to put you into sleep before they make their point because they know it's a lie. So I will read to you the first paragraph of Elizabeth's proclamation. The first line is indented about 3 letters, which means it's a quote, right? And first line indent means it's a quote, speech marks means it's a quote, and the whole paragraph indented means it's a quote. So in this case, the first line is indented. So here we go. It's a quote. Whereas there has been passed in the present session of Parliament the Royal Styles Act 1953, which act recites that it is expedient that the style and titles at present appertaining to the Crown should be altered so as to reflect more clearly the existing constitutional relationship of the members of the Commonwealth to one another and their recognition of the Crown as the symbol of their free association and of the Sovereign as the head of the Commonwealth, and which act also recites that it was agreed between representatives of Her Majesty's Government in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, the Union of South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, assembled in London in the month of December 1952, that there is need for an alteration thereof, which, whilst permitting of the use in relation to each other, whilst permitting of the use in relation to each of those countries of a form suiting its particular circumstances, would retain a substantial element common to all, colon.
So what's with the colons then?
Colon means that everything after it is a lesser point, right? But what they're saying is if anyone spoke like that, people would be yelling out, get on with it, get to the point. What are you talking about? We now do not know what you were talking about. That is what you've established. Someone's had a conversation somewhere and we don't know what you're talking about. I can't understand that. I've read that 20 times and I can't understand that. Anyway, so retain a substantial element common to all, colon, new paragraph, and the first line is indented, which means it's another quote. And whereas by the said act, the assent of the Parliament of the United Kingdom was given to the adoption by us for use in relation to the United Kingdom and all other the territories for whose foreign relations our government in the United Kingdom is responsible, of such style and titles as we may think fit having regards to the said agreement, in lieu of the style and titles at present appertaining to the Crown, and to the issue by us for that purpose of our royal proclamation under the Great Seal of the Realm, colon. I can't understand that. I've read it 20 times. So, next paragraph, first line indent, so it's another quote, and each point is less and less and less of an important point because you've got a colon, and so the next, after a colon, you've got, it's a subclause. And now we've got another colon, so we've got another subclause. And now we've got another paragraph, which is a subclause of a subclause of a subclause, which is a quote of a quote of a quote, which is a moot point hearsay. Right?
Right.
So, purpose of our royal proclamation under the Great Seal of the Realm, colon. quote, "We have thought fit, and we do hereby appoint and declare, by and with the advice of our Privy Council, that so far as conveniently may be, on all occasions and in all instruments wherein our styles and titles are used in relation to all or any one of more of the following, that is to say, the United Kingdom and all other the territories of whose foreign relations our government in the United Kingdom is responsible, our style and titles shall henceforth be accepted, taken and used as the same are set forth in manner and form following, that is to say, the same shall be expressed in the English tongue by these words, colon." Right? So these guys are making stuff difficult to make it sound powerful or empowered or authoritarian, when it's actually they are trying to cover up a lie. And here's the lie. This is the moot point hearsay, and the entire paragraph is inset, and the first line is inset, and it's set in speech marks. So this is also a quote within a quote within a quote, but it's also a subclause within a subclause within a subclause within a subclause. So it's actually a moot point hearsay. So what's happened is something really small's happened, and we've been told, we heard a Chinese whisper that some boy doing the garden had heard from some woman walking past that, quote, "Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith," end quote.
So basically, this is like a Chinese whisper they've made a proclamation. Did this go in the newspapers?
Yeah, this was in the London Gazette. So
right. That was the official paper that the proclamation would go into.
Yeah, this is what made it legal. So it says Elizabeth II, it's got the Roman numeral 2, which is a different language, right? So some people go, oh, that's Elizabeth II. Everyone knows that. No, it doesn't. Everyone knows that is what they want you to think, right?
No, it's not Elizabeth II at all then.
No, it's Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom. And grace of God means no deeds, nothing's done. That's what by the grace of God means, no deeds. Nothing's
talking about deeds. Can I ask you a question? I don't know whether
I want to stay on topic with this. I've got 2 paragraphs to go. Hold that thought. So Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom, which is by no deeds of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories, Queen. There's no comma there. There's no queen at the beginning. There's no comma between other realms and territories, comma, Queen. It just says, and of other realms and territories, Queen, which is a unsubstantiated fiction. It doesn't make sense. Comma, head of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth ended in 1959, so you're just after this. Defender of the faith. Well, I'm a defender of the faith. I think you probably are too, but whose faith and what are they doing?
How do you define defender of the faith then?
Yeah, exactly. And in the Latin tongue, by these words, Elizabeth II, and then the Roman, the Latin, and small caps though, so it's not ancient Latin, it's Latin. Dei Gratia Britanniarum Reginorum Fidel Defensor. Right. Now, new line. First line is not indented, but the rest of the paragraph is indented. So given at our court at Buckingham Palace, that's legitimate, yeah. But then this is a quote, right? The rest of it, the paragraph is indented. This is a quote. This 28th day of May in the year of our Lord 1953 and in the 2nd year of our reign, full stop. And then centered, it says in all caps, which is 8 in Latin, God save the Queen. And the writers will go, she's illegitimate, she's a fake. You think we got away with it? Phew, man.
And only God can save the Queen.
Yeah. And then down the bottom, in very small font, about 6-point lettering, which is the minimum for legal fonts, it says London, it's centered London, new line, all caps, this is all caps, London, New Line, printed and published by Her Majesty's Stationery Office. So it's a home job, you know. Then 1953, and then in normal lowercase lettering, price 6 pence net, yeah. And then in all caps to the left, printed in Great Britain, and then in small caps, S.O.C in all caps, and then lowercase all caps ODE. So it's supposed to say SO code, but it's actually S.O.C and then ODE, and then NO dot number, maybe 6539873. So
What does that mean then?
well, it's just their registered number, right? But what they did was they registered this on they registered this 11th supplement to the London Gazette, right?
What do you mean by 11th supplement?
Well, that's what it says. It says 11th supplement to the London Gazette of Tuesday, 26th of May, 1953, and it says that
tutoring one-on-one.
It says that in many different fonts, right? But when you actually look at the supplement had the wrong date, and the there were three subsequent supplements with dates before her date, right? So she's lying.
The Queen's lying.
Yeah, the proclamation's a lie. The dates are a fraud, right? So
can I just interrupt? Did the Queen know that she had this proclamation and that it was fraudulent? Does she know that she's a fraud?
Oh yeah. She's been abdicating to me since 1968, and a lot, right, including getting shot at. So the London Gazette,
you got shot at?
No, she did. The Queen got shot at on my behalf. I had nothing to do with it. But she got shot at 2 days before she came to see me. Why
did she get shot at? To put her off coming to see you?
No, she got shot at because she was refusing to abdicate to me. Right, she was hindering, she was dragging her feet. Anyway, the London Gazette, right, supplements. That's another story. There's a lot of stories.
You heard it all here first.
So the London Gazette supplements are the 29th of May to the 2nd of June, 1953. And they're all called, so the supplement to the London Gazette of Tuesday, 26th of May. All right, and these supplements are from the 29th of May to the 2nd of June. She was crowned on the 2nd of June. So the first supplement is Monday, 1st of June, 1953. Second supplement, Monday, 1st of June, 1953. Third supplement, Monday, 1st of June, 1953. Fourth supplement, Monday, 1st of June. Fifth supplement, Monday, 1st of June. Sixth supplement, seventh supplement, eighth supplement, ninth supplement, Monday, 1st of June, 1953. 10th supplement, Monday, 1st of June, 1953. The 11th supplement, Friday, 29th of May, 1953, is dated before but put in later. So what I'm saying is there's 10 supplements put in before her supplement. So what I'm saying is that these supplements are dated the 1st of June. She was crowned on the 2nd of June.
Yeah.
They forgot to put in that she was proclaiming herself as the Queen, so they backdated it from the 2nd of June to the 29th of May. Right?
How can you backdate in a newspaper then?
Well, you can't. It's actually legal to backdate, but you're not. It's not legal to backdate a proclamation or a decree or a treaty. But you can actually backdate a legal letter to someone. But they've backdated it from Tuesday, the 2nd of June to Friday, the 29th of May, and then so that's the 11th supplement, and then the 12th supplement and the 13th supplement. Winston Churchill is lodging stuff on the Friday, the 29th of May, 3 documents, 3 more supplements to try and normalise the fraud.
So we're just going down a rabbit hole of telling lie after lie after lie just to cover up the previous lie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that is called the British Empire. Yeah.
That's politics.
Yeah, and that's deep state, and it is just an absolute fraud. And if you expose this fraud, we want to talk to you with our giant moustaches.
Well, Greg, we've been on for probably, what, over an hour now, and that's probably our longest part yet. Do you feel there's more to come?
Oh yeah. I only made one point. You know.
Would you like to come back?
Yeah, sure. We can do another one. I don't know. Are you doing more
Do you want
tomorrow?
to do tomorrow at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, sure.
Is that all right by everybody else? Okay, look forward to seeing you then. So, Greg, thank you so much. We
Great.
are going to do another show 9 o'clock Friday night. And if you're not doing anything, please tune in. So, Greg, you're a star. Thank you so much. I have learned, I'll be perfectly honest, I've learned more in my 3 sessions with yourself than possibly anybody else I've ever had on the show.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Caroline.
So this is the bar. This is yes. So thanks, Greg. Have a good night.
Sure.
And I'll bid everybody farewell on Facebook. And this will be uploaded to YouTube very shortly when we've finished our Skype call. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. And please keep putting questions in the live feed because, Greg, you are analysing this, aren't you?
I spent about 2 minutes looking at comments.
2 minutes.
I don't know. I was out all day. It was beyond my control.
It's been beautiful weather and it's going to be gorgeous tomorrow. So we'll see what we can do. Okay, we've just got 2 more days before the weather plummets. Thanks, everybody, for listening. It's Caroline Stevens, Seeking the Truth. Please do subscribe on YouTube. And I cannot share on Facebook. I've got a reprieve apparently at some point tomorrow, which will mean I've got a window of opportunity of probably about 5 or 10 minutes before I get shut down. So please subscribe on YouTube. Facebook, I think, is going to be a thing of the past for me. So have a good night, everybody, and see you again soon. Good night for now. Bye.